the production value I'm working with. Come on. Yep, no. Come on, buddy. Yep. The Prospect Pyramid. This is now the 4th year that I've done the Prospect Pyramid for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and if you don't know what the Prospect Pyramid is, here's a little summary. When I was with the LeafsNation.com, we always did a prospect ranking of the top 20 Leafs prospects, all the way from 20 to 1. The Pension Plan Puppets have something similar with their top 25 players under 25. What drove me nuts about the top 20 Leaf prospects specifically was the semantics of it. I have this guy ranked 12th, you have him 8th. Maybe ranking prospects with a number works better in baseball. I just don't know if it works with hockey. There's so many different roles as a guy: a grinder, a forechecker, a fast player, a playmaker, a goal scorer, a shutdown defenseman, a guy who can move the play, a goalie. Really, for goalies, your only job is to stop the puck. But for everyone else, it's a little bit more complicated. Meanwhile, there's so much development going on in season. A guy goes on a hot streak, a guy goes on a cold streak, a guy loses his confidence or something. So the idea I came up with the Prospect Pyramid is sorting prospects into tiers. The top tier is your franchise players, franchise changers. What screwed it up a little bit is the first year I did the Prospect Pyramid, the Leafs had Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. I had Matthews in the number 1 tier, and then forever everyone's had to live up to Mitch Marner and William Nylander being in tier 2. More realistically, Timothy Liljegren has been in the 2nd tier for the past 2 years. Number 1 needs to be the cream of the crop. For example, last season, if I was doing a Vancouver Canucks pyramid, I would have been justified putting Elias Pettersson number 1. After that, Tier 2 is guys who have a high likelihood of making the NHL along with high potential. To me, tiers 3 and 4 are a combination of likelihood of making the NHL and potential. Maybe your ceiling is high, but your likelihood of hitting that ceiling isn't very high. Maybe your ceiling is low and you basically are what you are, but you have a really good chance of making the team this year. So now that you're refreshed, you know what the Prospect Pyramid is. Let's go through it with a couple changes from years past. 1, there will be goalies this year. I know I said that last year, but then I didn't include any, which I think is wrong. Not to mention, people have sent me their own prospect pyramids, and they're like, well, our team's best prospect is a goalie. How could you have done a Flyers prospect pyramid last year without including Carter Hart, or with the Canucks, not include DiPietro or Demko? And the second change is I'm going to be writing players down in different colors, meaning different things. Blue is new. Players in blue are players who were either newly drafted, newly acquired, or goalies who I didn't include last year. Players labeled in black are players who were in the prospect pyramid last year but have stayed in their same tier. Players in green have gone up a tier, and players in red have gone down. And there's one special player I'm going to label in orange, and he's a mystery. Before we fill in the pyramid, there are a bunch of Leaf prospects who are no longer Leaf prospects, and that should be noted. No longer in the Leafs organization, we have Sean Durzi, Carl Grundstrom, Calle Rosen, Andreas Borgman, Andrew Nielsen, Fedor Gordeev, and Jordan Subban. Now that might stress you out, but with the exception of Jordan Subban, who just walked as a free agent, the Leafs at least got something for all these guys because they were traded. Sean Durzi and Carl Grundstrom I both had in tier 3 last year. I think they're going to be great. Grundstrom got a bunch of NHL goals for the Kings at the end of last season, but the trade-off is you get Jake Muzzin, which is pretty good. Calle Rosen was traded to Colorado in the Nazem Kadri, Tyson Barrie, Alexander Kerfoot, I might as well say all the players involved trade, and he probably wouldn't have been in the pyramid this year anyway because he would have been too old. Andreas Borgman was traded for Jordan Schmaltz, who is a right-handed shot defenseman from the St. Louis Blues. Schmaltz is 25. He's not going to be in the pyramid because he's just a guy. He's a player. Andrew Nielsen, I correctly predicted in last season's video that this was his put-up or shut-up season with the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. He got traded for Morgan Klimchuk, who the Leafs also traded. And, of course, Fedor Gordeev no longer because he got traded to the Minnesota Wild. In fact, I think that was one of Paul Fenton's last moves as Minnesota Wild GM. Now for the graduates. Frederick Gauthier was a guy I also said was in a put-up or shut-up season, and turns out he put up. He was a full-time NHLer. Will he be that again this season? I don't know. To be honest, I kind of think he's going to get traded in the next few weeks. Regardless, he's a graduate. Travis Dermott. He might miss the beginning of the season due to an injury, but he is a full-time NHLer. Andreas Johnsson. What a difference a year makes. Once a prospect, and now a 20-goal scorer who is paid. And there's another guy on the list who I'm putting an asterisk next to. Ilya Mikheyev. He can't exactly be a Leaf prospect. He's never even been in their system. He was a free agent signing out of the KHL. He's going to be 25 on October 10th, and if the Leafs send him down to the Marlies, that might be over, Johnny. He might just leave. I don't know. I don't really think he's a prospect, so I guess he's an automatic graduate, expected to make the NHL team, if that makes any sense. And lastly, our Orange player, Justin Brazeau. If you've been watching any of the rookie tournament, you'll know Brazeau as the player in a Leafs jersey that makes you think, oh my god, who taught that bear how to skate? He's already 21 years old, but he's 6'6", 226 pounds. And last season in the OHL, as the captain of the North Bay Battalion, in 68 games he put up 113 points, 61 of which were goals. Which is slightly surprising because the season before he had 39 goals and 75 points, which is still good, but not that. An extremely intriguing prospect. The only problem is he is technically not a Leaf prospect. He's not signed to an NHL contract with the Leafs. He signed a 2-year AHL deal with the Toronto Marlies. So he's more of a project than a prospect, but wow, is he an intriguing one. I gotta put him on the board somewhere. Now let's fill out this pyramid, huh? Tier 1. Nobody, dude. No one in the Leafs' current prospect pool has anything close to the potential of an Austin Matthews or an Elias Pettersson or like a Jack Hughes. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up being better players, but right now there's no reason to believe that. Although it is fun to dream. Tier 2. 2 players. Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin, who you might notice is the first player written in green. That's because last season he was a tier 3. Don't read into me putting Liljegren above Sandin. It's just there wasn't any room. Listen, tie goes to the veteran, okay? Liljegren went from what should have been a top 10, potentially a top 5 pick, to being a prospect who got mono, to falling to 17, to the Leafs picking him at 17 and everyone going, oh my god, what a steal, to being one of the most productive teenage defensemen in American Hockey League history, to being a disappointment apparently and now being underrated by a lot of Leaf fans. But the Leafs have been developing him the good old-fashioned way. He's a defenseman, he shoots right, that's excellent right off the hop. Relatively big body, he can play 5-on-5, he can play special teams, what's not to like? Rasmus Sandin was sort of the opposite. He came in with low expectations and crushed them as an 18-year-old in the AHL. 6 goals and 28 points in 44 AHL games as an 18-year-old, and in the playoffs he added another 10 points in 13 games as an 18-year-old in the AHL, and again, not a big one, like 5'11", 180 pounds around there. Now, a word of caution, the power play helped Sandin put those numbers up, but also there were stretches during the season where the Marlies had injuries or just flat out Sandin getting promoted. He was playing on the Marlies' top pair and sometimes playing close to half an hour a night. There was a legit chance that Sandin and Liljegren, maybe even both of them, make the Leafs this season out of camp, if not at some point around the trade deadline. Tier 3 is sparse but interesting. Tier 3, funny enough, 3 players. Jeremy Bracco, a player who is brand spanking new and for some reason controversial in Leafs Nation. Little guy, fast, playmaker, puts up a lot of points. Does that remind you of anybody? Okay, sorry. Does that remind you of anybody under contract? Can't be too soon if it's ongoing. But Jeremy Bracco was above a point a game in the AHL last season. In 75 games, he had 22 goals, 57 assists, 79 points. And in the AHL playoffs, in 13 games, he put up 16 points and took 1 penalty, which was consistent with him in the regular season. He only took 8. In 88 professional hockey games last season, Jeremy Bracco took 10 penalties. Now, the criticism with Bracco is, whoa now, a lot of those points were put up on the power play. But to that, I would say, did you see how bad the Leafs' power play was last season? Having a good power play is not a bad thing. The only thing I would say about Bracco is once Marner is locked up, the Leafs' top 9 will basically be locked up for at least 2 years. So to me, he's still a great prospect, but I wonder if the Leafs deal him. I really don't know what's going on there. The first blue name, the first new name in this list, Nick Robertson, a little defender playing on the Peterborough Petes. wow, is this guy impressing at the rookie tournament. Wow, does he look good. He was the Leafs' first pick in 2019, going in the second round, and to some people, that was a steal. Last season, he was the top scorer on the OHL's Peterborough Petes in his draft year as a defender. Yeah, he's good. You think that's nuts. At the time I'm shooting this video, he's still 17. He doesn't turn 18 until this week. And worth noting, the Peterborough Petes aren't very good. So for him to have this success at that age as a defender on a team that bad, it's pretty impressive. Tier 3, this guy is why it's dumb not to have goalies in your prospect pyramid, Joseph Woll. He was a 913 in the NCAA 3 years ago, a 915 2 years ago, and he had a 919 save percentage last season. He just turned 21, he's signed to a contract, he's going to play professionally in the Leafs organization this season, and I am intrigued. I think he's the best goalie prospect the Leafs got. So, looking at the Leafs prospect pyramid so far, you might go, oh my god, the Leafs only have 5 players in the first 3 tiers. And I gotta admit, I was a little concerned when I wrote that down too. But consider that, like I said, once Marner is locked up, the top 9 is secure on offense. Defense has been the problem. Defense is the question mark going forward. Alright, well I see 3 excellent defenders in there. Liljegren, Sandin, and Robertson. Well, you're gonna need a solid goalie at some point. There's Joseph Woll. So right now, is the Leafs prospect pool amazing? No. Is it plentiful? Not really. But it does, for the most part, suit their needs. Tier 4 is a little more plentiful. That is a lot of names, and oh yeah, you already see, yeah, you're mad at me. Let's talk about the familiar names first. Pierre Engvall, 2014 7th rounder, took a while to come from Sweden to the AHL, but once he hit the AHL, he was immediate impact player on the Calder Cup winning team. 6'5" every time he steps onto the ice, was a winger, played a little bit of center. It looks like he can do both pretty adequately. This guy might actually make the NHL. I don't know what his ceiling is, which is why he's in tier 4. I don't think it's very high, but his chance of making it as a depth guy is mid. Dmytro Timashov, also a depth pick, also Swedish, but shorter than Engvall. He's gonna turn 23 on October 1st. And his production's been going up. A lot of that has been propped up by the power play. For me, Timashov, though, is a frustrating prospect because this Leafs organization has guys who can score, has talented forwards. What's Timashov got to do to really stand out from the pack? And to me, I just haven't seen enough of that. I wouldn't be surprised if, unless he breaks out and goes nuts, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Leafs move off of him at some point. Adam Brooks, another 23-year-old little guy. I was really worried he was in bust territory. In his first AHL season, he only had 19 points. Last season, he had 40. Still, though, I'm not sure the ceiling is all that high, and I'm not sure his likelihood of making this team is very high either. And last out of the familiar names, Igor Korshkov. Oh, whoops. That's better. Igor Korshkov, former second-round pick from the Mark Hunter era. Here's the problem with Igor Korshkov. People have been calling him a bust. No. Busts are players who suck. Igor Korshkov is a player who has had terrible luck, and he has had a terrible time staying healthy. He finally played a few games in the Continental Hockey League at the end of last season. He finally came over to North America, played 9 playoff games with the Toronto Marlies in a depth role. Granted, he only scored 1 goal, but he stays in tier 4 because he's 6'4" every time he hits the ice, and unlike last season, he proves that he actually exists. I've heard a few rumblings, oh, he has a chance of making this team this year. What? He's got some work to do, and he can prove himself in the AHL this season. However, he's got to, actually do that first. For new names, he's been in the organization a few years. I just finally wised up and put goalies in. We got Ian Scott. He was absolutely spectacular last season with the Prince Albert Raiders of the WHL. He had a 932 save percentage. Now, granted, that was on a pretty stacked team, and all the seasons before that, he couldn't get above a 900 save percentage, so last year was a pretty big jump. I would like to see how he does against professional competition this season. He had the 1 game with the Marlies last year, allowed 3 goals, and picked up the win. Nice start. Mikko Kokkonen, a 3rd-round pick of the Leafs in 2019. He played in Finland last season. He was tied for the lead in points from defensemen on his Finnish team with 19. Granted, the guy he was tied with played more games. Also granted, that guy was like 30. He needs to continue to play against and excel against grown adults in the Finnish league, and ideally I'd like to see him at the World Juniors wrecking his peers. Mikhail Abramov is pretty interesting to me. Typical Dubas pick, a little player who put up a bunch of points. Now granted, this was in the QMJHL. His mission for this upcoming season is to continue to improve his all-around game and dominate people in his age group before the Leafs can think about moving him on to professional hockey. Next is Nick Abruzzes. Please make the Leafs. I really like saying your name. Nick had 80 points in 62 games in the USHL last season. Now, if that doesn't sound impressive to you, consider that the second highest scorer on his team had 60 points and the third highest had 49. He was 19 when the Leafs drafted him. He's 20 now, but those are numbers that catch your eye a little bit at the very least. And the last newcomer, boy, I hope I don't screw up his name, but I know I'm going to, Teemu Kivihalme from Finland. He is a left-handed D. He was the top scoring defender on Karpat of the Finnish league last season. He's 24. Honestly, I think there's an outside chance this guy makes the Leafs. I don't know if he's going to be in the opening night roster, but he might be one of the spare defensemen that they carry. Because in terms of going and playing in the AHL, I don't really know why he would do that at 24. Like, you can go play pro anywhere in the world. He's doing this to make the NHL. He had multiple teams knocking on the door to offer him a contract. Let's hope he proves why. Now, our first guy who's moved up, great name, Mac Hollowell. Defender? Nice. Shoots right? Nice. 56 points in 63 games in his draft year? Nice. He's a little guy? Dubas. He's an overager? Dubas. He's from the Sioux Greyhounds? Dubas. And I saw that pick last year and I had him in tier 5 and I thought, okay, but he better kick ass. And guess what? 24 goals and 77 points in 64 OHL games last season. Nice. He's about to turn 21 and he's going to go into his first full season playing against professionals. This is going to be big for Hollowell, but he did big things last year, and that's why I moved him up from 5 to 4. The last guy moved up from 5 to 4, Mason Marchment. Look, he's 24 years old. He's played in 44 games in each of his last 2 AHL seasons. 2 years ago, he had 26 points. Last year, he had 25. He is what he is. But you know what else he is? 6'4", a proven playoff performer, and a consistent pain in the ass. No, I do not think his ceiling is very high, nor do I think it has to be. This is exactly the sort of guy who the Leafs could use in a depth role, and even though I only have him in the 4th tier, I could easily see him playing NHL games for the Leafs this season. Nazem Kadri getting traded opened up a job vacancy in the pain-in-the-ass department for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I think Mason Marchment should apply. Now, our only guy who I've demoted, SDA. Well, who is that? Simeon Dur Argachintsev, SDA. A lot of people love him. He's this little guy. He was the youngest player drafted in 2018, and I compared him to Jeremy Bracco. This guy who, in the 3rd round, Kyle Dubas took a flyer on, ignoring his size. You know what? This guy's got skill. He's going to put up points. He ended up playing a little bit of pro at the end of last season in the ECHL. He put up a goal and an assist in 3 games. Cool. In 9 playoff games in the ECHL, he put up a goal and an assist. Cool. In 68 games in his draft year, he had 51 points, 12 of them goals. In 62 games last season, 46 points, 6 of them goals. Now, we've already had this conversation about the Peterborough Petes not being very good. They're not. But I wanted to see a step up in production from SDA, and we just did not see that. I mean, he had 1 fewer point on the Peterborough Petes than his teammate Liam Kirk, another undersized forward who was drafted in the 7th round in the same year. I still think SDA has a ton of skill and a ton of potential, and I'm excited to see what he does the rest of the way. But last year, I had really high hopes, had him all the way up in tier 3. I think I need to pump the brakes a little bit. That's why I demoted him to tier 4. Moving on to tier 5. Our second demotion, you might think this is harsh, Emily Rasanen. Dude, he's drafted 2nd round, decent numbers in his draft year. He's a 6'7" defender, right-handed shot, hell yeah. His next season in junior, it's not as productive. The next season, oh, okay, cool, this guy's gonna be on the Marlies. Nope. goes to Finland. Is he gonna play? Nope. The team doesn't even play him. It screws his whole season up, and he spent last year in 3 different leagues. Oh, but it's okay. He's gonna be more stable. He's gonna be on the Marlies this year. Nope. Went back to Finland to play on Jokerit of the KHL like he did last year. The only difference is this year he actually appears to be playing. Honestly, the only reason this guy is in tier 5 and not in everybody else is because he's a second rounder, and I would still love to see him work out. But playing actual hockey games seems like it would help, and I hope he does that this season. In 2018, center Riley Stotts went from basically nobody on the Swift Current Broncos to having an amazing time with the Calgary Hitmen. All right, let's see if he keeps that up. Last season on the Hitmen, full season, he did very well. Not amazingly, but he did enough to be in tier 5 and not everybody else. Pontus Holmberg, first of all, the Leafs have 2 Pontuses. That has to be an NHL record. 10 points in 47 games with Vaxjo, V-A-X-J-O, of the SHL in Sweden. That's not very much, but they don't score as much in that league, and it's very difficult to make the SHL as a teenager. He at least did that. I want to see a step from him this year, otherwise he risks going to everyone else as well. Philip Kral, defender with the Spokane Chiefs of the WHL. He had a better season last year than in his draft year, but not that much better. He's really got to take a step, but still enough to be on the pyramid. Jesper Lindgren played a regular shift in Finland last season as a right-handed defender. He had 2 points in 4 playoff games with the Marlies. He's got to find a regular spot in the Marlies' top 6 to stay on here, to stay legit. Mike Koster is new to this list. He was drafted just this year. I want to see a huge season in the USHL out of him. And also added to this list, free agent signing out of Mercyhurst College, Joseph Duzak. He's going to be Charlie Lindgren. He's going to be Jesper Lindgren's competition. Did I say Charlie earlier? Doesn't matter. Get this. Duzak was the highest scoring player on his entire team in college last season with 47 points. The next highest scoring teammate had 37. The next highest scoring defender on his team, 8 points. And the final tier, everybody else. Dude, we could go through the top 30 or 40 or whatever it is prospects in the organization. I don't see much a point for guys who there's not much reason to talk about them because they're probably never going to make it. Which is a super harsh thing to say, and good, because I can't wait to look like an idiot when someone who wasn't even on this pyramid this year but could have been ends up being on the Leafs top line. Come on! Prove me wrong. I would love it. But in the meantime, this is it. Your 2019-20 Toronto Maple Leafs prospect pyramid. Do you like it? How do you think I did? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you like the promotions? Do you like the demotions? Do you hate them? Do you hate me? Which prospects do you think are completely overhyped, and which ones do you think we're all sleeping on? And who are you most looking forward to watching this season? And on that note, who do you think is actually going to play games for the Leafs this season? So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. The prospect pyramid takes forever to make, so thank you very much for sticking it out through the whole thing. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends that the prospect pyramid video is the unofficial beginning of the season, don't you know? Please consider making a donation to Easter Seals Ontario. That's a charity that helps out kids with physical disabilities. I have a link down below. I'm trying to raise $50,000 for Easter Seals before November 14th. If you can help me on my way to that goal, and I will hit that goal, I would be extremely grateful.